Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys we are going to be profiling another starter deck from 2004. And today we'll be profiling for you the Seto Kaiba Evolutionary Starter Deck from 2004. Last week we posted and talked about the Yugi Starter Deck from 2004, and now we're doing Seto Kaiba. Now keep in mind, the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to be doing some duel videos very shortly on the channel, which should be up in the next few weeks, showcasing the 2004 starter decks and 2003 starter decks and the 2002 starter decks and all those awesome starter decks fighting off against each other. Now the Seto Kaiba one compared to the 2004 Yu-Gi-Oh! Starter deck is good, but for its time that when it came out, the Yugi starter deck was better in terms of reprints compared to the Kaiba one. The three new cards that came out of this starter deck, though, guys, were Kaiser Seahorse, a reprint of Blue Eyes White Dragon again, and Shadow Spell. So, the two new cards that came out, really, were Kaiser Seahorse and Shadow Spell. Now, Kaiser Seahorse worked well in the same way that Double Costin worked with Dark Magician. If you guys don't know what Double Costin did, you could use Double Costin, which was a 17 dark monster, and its effect stated you can use this monster for the tributing of a monster that requires 2 tributes, that is dark attribute. Kaiser Seahorse, same thing. The card reads, you can if you tribute summon a light monster, you can treat this one monster as 2 tributes for the tribute summon. So this counts for a way to use Blue Eyes White Dragon by using Kaiser Seahorse as a 1 tribute. It's the same exact thing, but they decided to print Kaiser Seahorse in the main set because it actually was a Kaiba card used in Battle City. Shadow Spell is kind of like an early Fiendish Chain, if you guys are familiar with that card when it came out in the 5Ds era, and was used prominently in Zexal. We used it competitively in the Zexal format and early Arc 5 formats. But Fiendish Chain, that's kind of what Shadow Spell is. It's an upgrade from Spellbinding Circle, which became Shadow Spell, and then you have Fiendish Chain came out years later. That's kind of how this works. And it's a decent card. It's actually a pretty good continuous trap card that works against monsters. They lose 700 attack. They can't attack, but they still get their effects. That's where Fiendish Chain is a little bit better. You see how they power creeped it much later on in history. The Blue Eyes White Dragon you see here, this is the artwork is from the original Legend of Blue Eyes, but it's a super rare instead. So let's really get into the nitty gritty here. So for your tributes you had in the deck besides Blue Eyes White Dragon, you have Luster Dragon #2, and Here's on Ryu! I love to say that, Here's on Ryu! Yeah, I love that card. I wish this was a holo at some point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. It'd be a really nice holo, I think. But like a ulti rare or a secret rare would be so nice, I think. But these are your 2 tributes. For your beaters, which I've mentioned in the Yugi video, I consider beat sticks between 1,500 to 18 attackers, so 1,800 attackers, because with the Crypt Spells and certain cards you have in the deck, they can gain attack and they can become more respectable. So a 15 beater can become a 17 beater, and things of that nature. So we have Urabi as your 15 beater, Komori Dragon, which with mountains becomes 17 attack, Kojikaki, which is a 15 attacker, Skull Red Bird is another 15 attacker, but it's a 15-50 attacker, so it can help you get over 50-50, 15-15, and I think with mountains on the field it becomes 17-50, I think. For your other beaters we have, which are more useful, you have Ryukishin Power, Rogue Doll, Battle Ox, Octaclops, which I actually think Kaiba used in the anime. I'm not quite sure, actually. And I just hollowed it out because it just got a reprint, my Legend, the Mystical Genie of the Lamp. So, Octaclops is actually probably the best one out of the entire beaters, like normal summonable beaters in the deck. And the reason for that is because its attack is 1,800, but its defense is 1,700. And a lot of cards, if you go first turn, you set your octaclops, they're going to take maybe 300, 400 damage sometimes, and then you'll be able to flip it up and then attack with it next turn. So you can get some damage in and then attack if you're using your brain and depend upon the pace of the duel and how it's going. So it's not a bad card in a starter deck, quote unquote, and it gives you some cool little strategies you can use with it. Next up, we have some effect monsters, which we'll talk about. We have Spirit Ryu, which is an okay card. We have Mad Sword Beast, which is another okay card. We have Lord of D, which you guys should know works off Flute of Summoning Dragons, and compared to the original Kaiba starter deck, where you really only had Blue Eyes White Dragon and Komori Dragon as your Flute of Summoning Dragon targets, you have a lot more in this starter deck. You have a lot more targets to go off with that. But still, you have to hard draw the Lord of D and Flute of Summoning Dragon, both, to still go off with them. So, you have to hard draw those both before you can do things. I should also mention, guys, if you're wondering here for a second, the reason why I'm doing this deck profile is I mentioned the same thing I did when I did the Yu-Gi-Oh! Starter deck, is because for you guys out there, it's for nostalgia, teaching you about Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history, and as well, it's also a way that if you want to build this deck for fun against your buddies, you know, build this starter deck and have fun against other starter decks from 2002, 2003, 2004, which I've already profiled on the channel in the past. You can literally use this as a guide, understand a little bit of how the deck works if you're playing against other starter decks. What's the good cards? What are the okay cards? Things of that nature. So that's what I'm trying to do for you here, so this can be a guide to you. The Hain is probably the best flip effect monster in this entire deck. For sure, and it's a very good effect monster as well. You can bounce tribute monsters back, which is really nice. Trap Master is okay. I've always called this called Michael Jackson from Thriller. This is literally Michael Jackson's face doing Thriller, I swear. It's even got the red eyes, for Pete's sake. And then we have Mystical Puppeteer as well. But yeah, even if you see other hollows in the deck, guys, the original hollows, like I showed you with these three, and everything else I just hollow out sometimes because I like hollowing out my starter decks to make them look nice. But this is card for card what were in each of the starter decks. Now, the sad thing about the Kaiba starter deck is it doesn't have as many searchers, quote unquote, as the Yugi starter deck. You had Sonic Bird in the Yugi starter deck to search out your Black Illusion, Black Luster ritual. You have a ritual in here. You have Paladin of the White Dragon ritual, but you don't have Sonic Bird to search out the ritual piece. Instead, you have Mystic Tomato and Witch of the Black Forest. That's all. Which, granted, in the other starter deck you have Sangan and Giant Rat. So, I guess. For your defensive monsters that you can use for defensive purposes, quote unquote, you have Mystic Horseman, which is I usually put him in defense position when I'm playing starter deck duels because he has a 1550 defense. But your main defensive monster is the Dragon Dwelling in the Cave, which is the 2000 Defender. So these are your two defensive monsters. As I've tried to break it down for you guys, which the way the starter decks were built back then, you have your new cards, which were these two new cards. You have new cards that came out of the starter deck. Then you have your your tribute monsters, your beat stick monsters, your better beat stick monsters, your effect monsters, your flip effects, your searchers, and then your defensive cards. That's how monster lineups broke down in every starter deck up to 2004. Now let's talk about our ritual that we have in the deck, which we actually have one, which was, I believe, the first reprint, because it wasn't reprinted in Retro Pack yet, I don't think. But that was Paladin of the White Dragon. So this card, if you guys don't know, this was actually a legit way back in the day, before we even had Kaiba Man, to actually get Blue Eyes White Dragon on the field. What you would do is you would tribute this off once you got onto the field to bring out Blue Eyes White Dragon directly from the deck. It was actually a viable way of doing it back in the day, before an age of Kaiba Man and things of that nature that made the deck a little bit faster. And compared to nowadays, we never use this, but back in the day, we used it. And if you've looked throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history, I think they even had this recently come out, in Zexal, They had a photon version of this, and then recently they got, they printed another one recently too for antagonist having ritual type monsters that are based off of this. I think even Red Eyes even has one. So throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history, they've come out with different versions that do the similar things compared to the Paladin and White Dragon, which is kind of interesting. But you have no way of searching the combo pieces out necessarily, so you have to hard draw most of them, which sucks. But it's an easy way to bring Blue Eyes White Dragon out. Your field spell is Mountains, which works with your Winged Beast and your dragons. For another, I have to say this is an amazing card to have in the deck, and it's very, very effective and very, very good, is Rush Recklessly. This was actually used in competitive play back in this time frame by a lot of players, because what you could do is it's pretty much a good neg 1. Not as good as Book of Moon, but it's a very good neg 1 in some respects, because what you could do is you could just set it. They would think it's a trap. You could chain it when they attacked, kind of like an early Honest to some extent, because what you would do is you would be like, oh, okay, you attack, my monster's got a little bit of less attack, I'll activate Rush Recklessly. They lose their monster, and they take some damage. So it's kind of like a spell version of Honest in a way. For your Crypt Spell cards, they're not as good as the Yugi ones per se. You have Fairy Meteor Crush for piercing damage, which we used to call it back in the day, Fairy Meteor Crush effect. Instead of calling it piercing damage, we called it having the Fairy Meteor Crush effect. You have Megamorphosis, which I hollowed out a super of it, but really, really good card. When you're down on your luck, if you can go for Megamorphosis, it can win you games, or just make you have a good comeback. And then Premature Burial is just a very good card to have as well in the deck. Next up, we have some just generic spell cards. You have Inexperienced Spy, D-Spell. You have D-Spell, Ukazi, Flute of Summoning Dragon, Fissure, Tribute to the Doom, and Soul Exchange, as well as you have Nobleman of Crossout as well as Change of Heart, Monster Reborn. So these are all your good normal spells. Soul Exchange really good, Nobleman really good, especially Change of Heart. You know this is a great card. Monster Reborn, good card. Tribute to the Doom, good card. And Flute of Summoning Dragon and Fissure are also decent cards as well. Let's go into the traps quickly. We have Gift of the Mystic Elf, D-Tribe, Burst Breath. This card reminds me of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super and everything. Ryokoki Field. Just Desserts, Dust Tornado, which is your kind of MST target. They don't give you Pot of Greed in the starter deck. They never did. They gave you Jar of Greed. Why, Konami? That was so stupid. Trap Hole and Light of Innervation, which is actually a good card if you know how to use it properly. So, guys, that is the starter deck in a nutshell. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. It's very fun to go back and play these. I've taken them to locals a lot recently, and people thoroughly, thoroughly enjoy playing them. It's kind of reminiscent of going back and playing as a kid, when you were at Target, Walmart, wherever place you were when you first started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And you're just playing on the floor with the starter decks. That's what it takes you back to. But now you're going back as an adult or a teenager, and you're going back and like, oh yeah, and now I know actually how to play the game. And it teaches you just how to use your resources, how to evaluate cards better. It teaches you a lot about fundamental Yu-Gi-Oh! Still, to this day, going back and playing those old Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. So, yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. Go Seto Kaiba! I love this starter deck. I'm so happy I rebuilt this one, because I actually picked them up back in the day. But till next time, guys, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling to all of you, and I will see you all next time. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. Take care, everybody.